Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. I am recording this so that you can go back and watch a pre-recorded copy of this if you choose to. But for those of you who are live, do me a favor, hit me up in the chat box or the message box. And if you have any questions, if something doesn't make sense, stop me. We can go through it again. If it does make sense, that's no problem. We can wait until the end and go through a simple Q&A session. But today we're going to be diving into kind of the black box secrets of the rich. And what I'm going to be showing you is how you can legally and ethically keep your tax dollars so you stop the bleeding, and then how you can grow that wealth, not just this year or the next year, but for the rest of your life into perpetuity, during your children's lives, your grandchildren's lives, for the rest of your family's bloodline. And so my goal today is very simple. It's twofold. Number one is I want you to expand your mind and shift your mindset about what is possible for you personally and your family, and what's possible for the world and what you're able to do, the impact you can make on the world if you just think differently, if you think about things differently. The second thing is I want you to level up your skill set, and I want you to learn this stuff because you're going to have to put this into practice. You're going to have to make this a way of life if you want to implement this strategy, and if you want to actually join the ranks in the 1041 Trust and Foundation System and join over 200,000 families in America who are now in the 1041 Trust and Foundation System. So again, my goal is simple. I want you to level up your skill sets and your mindsets. Now, let me introduce myself real quickly. My name is Sean Briscom, and from an early age, I was a diver. I trained for the Olympic team when I was 14 years old. I moved away from home to go train with Greg Louganis in Mission Viejo, California. And I traveled the world on the national team, got to see some amazing things, had an amazing experience growing up and traveling the world and competing nationally and internationally for the U.S. And what it was interesting was that it afforded me the ability to meet different people. My family, we grew up in California. I was raised kind of middle class. My dad was an engineer. Mom was a medical technologist, both 9-to-5ers, and both, had aspirations of retiring one day with gold watch and a pension. But when I was traveling and competing, I was meeting families that were of generational wealth and legacy wealth, and they owned businesses, and they controlled their own wealth. They controlled their own income. And they also were able to give back a lot more in a more meaningful way. That was what really impacted me the most, was their generosity and their philanthropic giving, their charity. I've been involved in financial services for over 18 years. Prior to that, I was a top sales manager at Dell. They were throwing stock options at us like crazy back in the day. And of course, the stock was splitting and doubling every year. And so in a very short period of time, within a 3-year period of time, saving everything I possibly could in my 401k through the employee stock purchase program, we became known as what was known as Dellionaires. And so at the ripe old age of 29, I decided I was going to get out. I retired. And I spent the summer in Austin just water skiing and having fun until I got a phone call from a friend of mine. She was with a new internet startup company here in Austin. So I decided to join that company and invest in it. And we grew that company. Over a period of about a year, we created a product. We created the platform for people to go shopping online and to shop together and check out one time. And what we did was we took the money, and then we would escrow that money and earn interest on the money for 30 to 45 days before we paid out those anchor stores. And then, of course, we got to float that interest, float that capital. We ended up getting purchased by a VC firm in 2000. And so we were sitting there with this big pile of cash, didn't know what to do with it. We decided to push our chips into the middle, go all in, double down, and start a second company. And that company was going to be even bigger. We the name of the game at the time was to quote unquote 10x your return, right? And so we thought that this lifestyle would go on forever, and unfortunately it didn't. In 2001, when the dot-com bubble burst, everything came screeching to a halt. And we were spending about $1 million a month on that business, that company, and everything stopped and it came crashing to a halt. We had to shut our doors and let everybody go. And we lost everything. And I started noticing that some friends of mine that were at Dell at the same time that I was had left Dell and were now investing in real estate. So I started doing research in real estate lending and investing, and just learned as much as I possibly could from a couple of friends of mine that had some real estate investment firms here in town and also in Dallas, and started my own firm here in Austin. Things were going really, really good for a long time. We were making a ton of money on investment properties. We would harvest the equity out. We would put it into properly structured accounts where the money would grow and compound forever, uninterrupted compounding. And it seemed like it was going to be awesome. But I had in the back of my head this thought that it felt almost like the dot-com bubble. It seemed like things were too good to be true. And of course, in 2008, we were hit with the largest recession in the history of America. And again, had to shut my doors, lay off everybody, lost everything, and start over, hit the reboot button and start all over again. So the reason I'm saying this and going through all of this for you is that I want you to know I've done a lot of things right, but I've also done a lot of things wrong. And if you're here and you're a business owner or an entrepreneur and you've had these same experiences where you've built something really, really amazing and then lost it, or built a big business and burned it to the ground, or something shifted in the market and you had to, literally stop everything, hit the reboot button and start all over again. I'm here to tell you that it's not your fault, that these cycles happen, these wealth cycles, as I call them. They happen throughout every entrepreneur's journey. But the problem is if you don't learn from those mistakes that you've made, then that would be your problem. And so my 3 biggest takeaways that I've learned from surviving 2 financial crashes, and building some, really meaningful businesses and losing everything, and then rebuilding it and losing everything, and then building it back up again and stabilizing that. After doing this for 17 plus years and surviving those 2 financial crashes, what I've learned is there are 3 main things that you have to understand, 3 principles. Number 1 is you got to find a way to keep your wealth safe from everything. Warren Buffett probably said this better than anyone else. He said, it's not what you make, it's what you keep that matters. It's what you keep that matters. And so keeping your wealth and not losing or transferring wealth is the key that the wealthiest families all understand and all know. That includes taxes, interest expense, inflation, lawsuits, divorces, anything. You've got to be able to lock it down. Second thing is you need to be able to grow your wealth safely and consistently without interruption. Without interruption being the key. And so if your money is in the markets, then it's at risk of loss. And if it's losing money, or if there's volatility of any kind, you're resetting that compounding and you're losing out, and it's interrupting that interest. And the third thing that I realized along the way is that in order to build massive wealth, you have to first learn how to give it all away. Now, when I first heard this, I thought that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But when I started researching the wealthiest families in America and what they do, it became crystal clear to me why the wealthiest families in America don't own anything, why they've given away everything. Now, I discovered all this the hard way, but you get to learn from my mistakes. And if you're a fan of Eleanor Roosevelt like I am, she said this. She said, learn from the mistakes of others because you can't live long enough to make them all yourself. So the hard way, the most difficult way to build wealth in America, or to create anything of significance, create any kind of legacy or significant family system or lifestyle or generational wealth, the hardest way to do this is, number 1, by trusting state licensed CPAs or tax attorneys. To trust them that they understand federal law, and specifically trust law, contract law, and constitutional law. Those 3 areas of expertise. The federal law, not the state law. And I'll give you an example. In the state of Louisiana, they follow French law. But in the state of Texas, where I'm at, we follow British common law. 2 totally different structures of law. And so if you're a CPA or a tax attorney, even at the highest level, if you're paying your team and they are state licensed, whatever state they're in is the only state that they can do business in. And they don't understand the federal guidelines or federal laws. So it's a lot more difficult of a journey trying to go that route. Can you do it? Can you pull it off? Yeah, you kind of can, but you're opening yourself up for all kinds of audits and all kinds of scrutiny by the IRS and other government organizations. So the second hardest way of doing this is believing that your stockbroker or that investing in the market is how you grow wealth. That is not where you grow wealth today. The stock market in general is nothing like it was 20 or 30 years ago. It is a totally different animal today. Heck, it's not even like it was 10 years ago during the last collapse. It's completely different today than it was even 10 years ago. So why would you put your family's wealth, your family's legacy in something so volatile and so risky that you could lose any of it? You know, that's not how the wealthiest families grow wealth. What they do is very, very different. And we'll jump into that here. The third hard way of building wealth and creating a legacy that grows from generation to generation is that believing that by creating expenses or making contributions, that those are as tax deductions, that those are the best ways to minimize your taxes. If you're playing that game, you're still playing with a CPA or a tax attorney or an estate planning attorney that's only licensed at the state level and only has access to those kinds of tricks and tips, okay? Now, if you want the easy way that's allowed my wife and I to live a truly purpose-driven life and a life full of meaning, you know, my wife and I, we've been foster parents for about 10 years now. We've had 10 little girls come through the house. We realize now more than ever that this is our calling. This is our mission and purpose in life, is to help these kiddos to heal from trauma and trauma-related abuse and neglect. That's what we were put on earth to do. And so it became extremely urgent for us to find a way to be able to financially pull that off. And so when we found the 1041 Trust and Foundation system, it's like everything shifted. And we immediately set up our own private foundation called Kind Foundation and started helping these kids. And to date, we have helped hundreds and hundreds of kids with resources and training and education, foster families, foster parents, adoptive parents, teaching and training and educating them on how to help these kids with trauma and abuse and neglect. Now, this is not for everyone, all right? This system, this structure is not for everyone. And so I want you to kind of realize that. You've got to first qualify, so there's going to be a whole application process where you're going to have to show that this is truly going to be a fit for you and that you can actually pull it off and commit to this. But the way I say it is this. I say you don't want to build a golden jewelry box if you don't have any diamonds to put into it, right? We don't want to spend all of this time and energy and effort and money putting together a structure like this if you don't have anything to flow through the system or to be able to benefit from the system. And then also, if all you want to do is to evade taxes, this is not going to be a fit for you at all. So you might as well shut it off and go watch Netflix or do something else, because that's not what this is. Now, if you do stay till the end, pull out a pen and paper, take really good notes, stay till the end. I've got an incredible offer for you that I just put together that I think you'll really, really enjoy. So let's pull out a pen and paper. Like I said, let's get in the frame of mind where we're going to start really digging into some of this stuff. I want you to take a few deep breaths right now and release. Breathe in. Release. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. Clear your mind of everything. I want you to be open to this opportunity. I'm about to show you exactly how you can legally and ethically keep your tax dollars so you can stop the bleeding and grow that wealth. So this whole structure, the 1041 system, comes down to three key concepts. Number one is you have to understand that in America, there are two different tax systems. There's one for the informed and one for the uninformed, and both are legal. Both are legal. Now, the question I have for you is, which system are you in? Are you in the system for the informed or the system for the uninformed? My bet is if you're sitting here watching this, you're in the uninformed category, meaning the 1040 system. The other system that we're talking about is called the 1041 system. So in America, you have the 1040 tax system, and then you have the 1041 tax system. Two totally different rules of the game, two totally different tax systems. Key number 2 is that in order for you to truly grow wealth, you've got to earn uninterrupted compounding. So Albert Einstein said this. He said, uninterrupted compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Uninterrupted compounding. Most people think it's just compound interest. That's not true. Uninterrupted compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. That's what Albert Einstein was talking about. So what's the difference between interrupted and uninterrupted? We'll get into that in a minute. Key number 3 is that you've got to understand and shift your mindset that the secret to success is to own nothing, but to control everything. You see, taxes follow title. So the more we own, the more we're taxed on things. And if you want to own it personally, then you're locked into the 1040 system. But if you're willing to give up ownership of the assets and the income, not lose control, you still maintain control of everything. But if you give up ownership, now you get to play by a different set of tax rules. And so Nelson Rockefeller coined this phrase, this quote back in 2014. He said, the secret to success is to own nothing, but to control everything. To own nothing, but to control everything. All right, key number 1. In America, there's 2 different tax systems, one for the informed, one for the uninformed. Both are legal. This is a quote by Judge Billings Learned Hand. He was from the Second Circuit Court of Appeals in New York, and he is the most quoted judge in Supreme Court history. And he said this. He died back in 1961. So he's when taxes first started, he was a judge in New York, right in the thick of things, in the thick of tax law. And he has been quoted more than any other lower circuit court judge by Supreme Court judges. He's been quoted more than any other judge in history. Okay. Now, what he was talking about was that the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. And that's systematically, we talk about systematic issues in America. Taxation is the biggest systematic barrier for most business owners and entrepreneurs is that they don't know what they don't know. And as such, the rich keep getting richer, the poor keep getting poorer. That's what we call wealth inequality. I want you to look at this. 8 men in the world right now, 8 men today have as much wealth as 3.6 billion people globally. 8 men own as much wealth as 3.6 billion people. And you see the gap, the wage gap going from the top earners to the bottom earners, and that wage gap just growing and growing and growing over time. Well, that's by design. Even the assets that the wealthy families own, the wealthiest 1%, those assets are up over 125% since the last crash, since the real estate bust of 2009. The bottom 20% of wealth earners or wealth holders have lost wealth during that exact same period of time. This information about this system, the 1041 system, this information is passed down from generation to generation through wealthy families. They pass this information on to their next of kin, and they keep the money in the family the whole time. They lock everything down so that as they go from generation to generation, the family's wealth just continues to grow and compound. The wealthy also teach other wealthy. Howard Buffett was a representative from Nebraska in Congress. He learned this in Congress, the 1041 system. Most politicians are in the 1041 system. They're not in the 1040 system. They may have a little bit of money in the 1040 system, which we'll go into in a second, but mostly all of their wealth is protected from taxation through the 1041 system. And so Howard Buffett taught his son Warren Buffett how to operate in the trust and foundation system, and Warren Buffett taught his son Howard G. Buffett, his son, how to do the same. And when Warren Buffett met Bill Gates for the first time in 2000, Remember, Bill Gates and Microsoft were under investigation by the IRS for tax evasion. They were bringing in foreign income from other countries, but not claiming tax in the U.S. And so the IRS and the government was after him. And when Warren Buffett and Bill Gates met for the first time, they had a lunch meeting. They ended up clearing their schedules for the whole day, and Warren Buffett brought in his tax team. And he taught this system, the 1041 system, to Bill Gates. A few years later, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was established, and Warren Buffett made a $34 billion donation to get it started. $34 billion donation by Warren Buffett to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. What do you think Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation did with that donation, with that money? They turned right around and invested it in a little-known company called Berkshire Hathaway, and now all of the wealth in the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is growing tax-free. And yes, they've done a ton of charitable work, don't get me wrong. But private foundations operate different than public foundations. If you don't believe me, let's just watch this video real quick.
Mr. Whitaker, I want to go back to your time when you worked for the Foundation for Accountability and Civil Trust. I worked for many, many years for various 501c3. So it's very interesting to me when I look at the board. Is this a private or a public foundation? Fact. Was that the 501c3? Is it a private or a public?
I don't know.
There are two separate types.
Congresswoman, I don't have the 990 filings or.
But you worked there from 2014 to 2017.
I was.
And you were the executive director for the foundation.
Yes, I was.
But you don't know if it's a private or a public.
I haven't worked for FACT in 16 months, and I in my preparation for this oversight hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker.
All right, I think you understand where we're headed with this, but do you really honestly believe that the acting DOJ director at the time, Whitaker, that he didn't know, since he was the chairman of the board, that he didn't know if his organization, his 501c3, was private or public? You see, in a private foundation, the goal of the trustee, the manager of that foundation, the goal is to keep the money and grow the wealth from generation to generation. And along the way, you do some charitable work. You do a lot of good work with that money. But make no mistake about it, it is not to give away all of your money. It is to grow the assets from generation to generation. In fact, you'll be seeing shortly that $34 billion that Warren Buffett gave to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that has now grown to $51 billion. Okay? So it's grown, just in the last 14 years, it's grown a considerable amount. Now, in 2015, when Mark Zuckerberg wanted to take Facebook public, he met with Bill Gates for the first time. He donated $3 million to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which won him a lunch date with Bill Gates. They sat down and Bill Gates taught him the 1041 system. A few weeks later, the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation was established, and Mark Zuckerberg announced to the world that he was going to be giving away 99% of his Facebook stock to charity. In fact, we see news reports of charitable donations by the wealthy all the time. You see, a new report reveals how the world's richest families give their money away. Meet the rich kids who want to give away all their money. Mark Zuckerberg, Priscilla Chan, $800,000 donation to their 8 favorite restaurants is like the median U.S. family giving 13 cents to each. Now, this was an interesting article because I was sitting there thinking to myself, this was written by the, what publication was this? I think this was Fortune Magazine, okay? I think it was Fortune Magazine. It was on May 15th. And what they said was Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan, through their foundation, gave away $800,000 donation to their 8 favorite restaurants. That's $100,000 per restaurant. And all this article can do is talk about how it's comparable to you and I giving 13 cents. That their wealth, somehow the $100,000 is less of an impact to the restaurant because of the wealth that Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan have accumulated. That somehow by being charitable and giving $100,000, that is not sufficient. this is the kind of stuff that drives me crazy. But I want to show you how this is done. So this is an actual return from a private foundation. And you can see it's Form 990-PF. PF stands for Private Foundation. And you can see right below the title, it says Return to Private Foundation. You can see it says Trust Treated as a Private Foundation. A trust requires a trustee or a manager of the wealth. That's why this is so significant. Now, this one happens to be the Buffett Early Childhood Fund, and you can see at the bottom here, there's $41.9 million in the Buffett Early Childhood Fund. Now, this was the original foundation that Howard Buffett, his father, set up for the family to transfer their wealth. All right. Now, what do you think is owned in the Early Buffett Childhood Fund? What kind of assets do you think this foundation owns? That's right, it's Berkshire Hathaway Class B shares to the tune of $32.9 million worth. This is the Howard G. Buffett Foundation. This is Warren Buffett's son, Howard G. Buffett, and he lives in Decatur, Illinois. You can see that it is a 501c3 exempt private foundation. It's a 990-PF, which tells you it's a private foundation, and he has $416 million of wealth assets in this foundation that he's managing and growing. And so what kind of assets do you think that his son, Howard G. Buffett, owns? What kind of assets? That's right, Berkshire Hathaway Class B shares. And so this is how the game is played, ladies and gentlemen. You know, the Susan Thompson Buffett Foundation. Susan Thompson Buffett is Warren Buffett's ex-wife. She passed away not too long ago. But you can see this is a 501c3. It is a nonprofit. This is a return to private foundation, 990-PF. And you can see it has $2.6 billion of assets, wealth in this foundation, all tax-free, growing from generation to generation. What kind of assets? Shares of Class B stock, Berkshire Hathaway. Other publicly traded securities as well. Okay, so this is how the game is played. When Buffett donates to the Gates Family Charity, the Bill and Melinda Gates Charity, and 4 other charities, what other charities is he donating to? We saw 2 of them, the Howard G. Buffett Foundation, the Susan Thompson Buffett Foundation, and also the Warren Buffett or the Buffett Early Childhood Fund. That's 3 of them right there. He's got plenty others to donate to. But this article says he donated roughly $3.17 billion of Berkshire Hathaway stock to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Now, all that stock is now tax exempt. Tax exempt. It's tax free. Okay? And it's part of his ongoing commitment to give away all of his wealth during his lifetime. All right? Now, what's funny is you see articles like this the very next day where it says the Gates Foundation is now one of Berkshire's largest shareholders. Think about that. So the Gates Foundation is one of Berkshire's largest shareholders. Or this one here, where it says Bill Gates gave away $35 billion this year, but didn't see his personal net worth drop. How is that possible? How do you give away money but not see your personal wealth drop? Well, it's simple. You give away that money to your own private foundation. This is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You can see it's a 501c3 tax-exempt private foundation, and it has $41.3 billion, up from $34 billion originally that Warren Buffett donated. Now, who manages all of this wealth, and what is all of that wealth going to? Well, these are the managers. In fact, this is a list of all the officers, directors, and trustees of this foundation. Remember, the trustee is the manager of the foundation. They control the assets of the trust. They manage the wealth of the trust. So you have 3 of them. You have Bill Gates, William H. Gates III. You have Melinda French Gates as a trustee. And trustee number 3, Warren E. Buffett. Think about that for a second. The Hiltons. Hiltons are a family of generational wealth that created a dynasty out of the hotel business. And Baron Hilton passed away last year. I don't know if you remember that, but passed away in 2019. And there were articles all over the place that we're talking about his charitable giving and how he left 97% of his massive fortune to a foundation. And so you can read the article. It says Barron Hilton died of natural causes at 91 in Los Angeles. He left 97% of his estate to the Conrad N. Hilton Foundation, which expects to grow its endowment from $2.9 billion to $6.3 billion, a $3.4 billion increase. How do you do that? How do you grow that fast? Well, we're about to dive into it. Here's an example. The relationship between the wealthiest families and politicians has always, always, always been tight. And all of these players, whether you're a politician or the wealthy benefactors of politicians, they all play this 1041 trust and foundation game. This is the Conrad N. Hilton Foundation. You can see that it's got $2.6 billion of assets in the foundation. Now you can see who's managing. Actually, these are the contributors. This is who donated to the foundation. The William Barron Hilton Charitable Remainder Antitrust. All right. Charitable Remainder Trust was the estate, the trust that when William Barron Hilton passed away, all of that wealth dumped into this foundation and is now all tax exempt. All right. And so here are the officers, directors, and trustees of the Hilton Family Foundation. Steve Hilton. We've got James Galbraith, Conrad Hilton III, Eric Hilton, William Barron Hilton Jr. All of these family members are able to live off of the fortune, the wealth of this foundation from generation to generation. Here's an example of Mark Zuckerberg declaring to the world that he was going to give away 99% of his Facebook stock over his lifetime. He got tons of publicity for this. Most of the wealthiest players out there all get the great PR value from this. The funny thing to me is that, when he made the announcement in 2016, he said $45 billion charitable donation, make a few $1 billion over the course of a career, and then set up a fund a charitable foundation to cater to the causes that interest you. Here's the actual return of the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation. You can see that it's a 501c3. You can see that it has $3 billion of wealth and assets inside of the foundation. What do you think the foundation owns primarily? That's right, Facebook Class B stock. And who are the contributors to the foundation? Chan CZI, Chan Zuckerberg Inc. Holdings LLC, which is Mark Zuckerberg himself. Even professional athletes like Andy Roddick, who is a good friend of mine. When I was in Mission Viejo training and diving, my roommate was a guy, his older brother, Lawrence Roddick. Lawrence and I were really close, and Andy was really young at the time. He used to come to the pool, and he would throw his toys in the pool, and we would dive down and pick them up and get them out for him. And so I've known his family for a while, and I remember this story that Andy told me one time about starting his own foundation. I asked him about it, and he said that he got the idea from Andre Agassi. When he first turned pro, he called Andre and he said, "Andre, what is the biggest regret you have as a professional athlete?" And Andre's response was pretty interesting, I thought. He said, "I wish I hadn't waited so long to start my foundation." So Andrew Roddick started the Andy Roddick Foundation at age 17, and it's grown substantially. Andre Agassi Foundation has eclipsed over $180 million over the last 22 years. Nancy Pelosi is even playing the game. If you think about it, she's been in Congress for 28 years, 3 decades, with a salary of $193,000. So how is it that her net worth is nearly $200 million? If she invested 100% of what she made, paid 0 taxes, but invested 100% for 30 years, 3 decades, with a 10% ROI, she would only be worth $30 million. How is it possible that these families are able to grow that much wealth? Well, it's a lot easier when it's all done tax-free. The Paul and Nancy Charitable Foundation is a 501c3, and you can see it's got $1.7 million of assets in the foundation right now. And you can see the contributors are her husband, Paul Pelosi, and Nancy herself. Even Ellen DeGeneres is in the game. When she turned 60, she announced to the world that she had set up the Ellen DeGeneres Wildlife Fund, and she invited Ashton Kutcher on her show to kind of commemorate the announcement. Ashton Kutcher, who owns a tech fund, has a tech fund that he manages, has a company in the tech fund called Ripple. Ripple donated $4 million to the Ellen DeGeneres Wildlife Fund. What do you think Ellen DeGeneres did with the $4 million that was donated to her wildlife fund? That's right. She turned right back around and invested it in Ashton Kutcher's tech fund. Even Jeff Bezos, Amazon CEO, does the same thing. And in fact, you can see these announcements like last year where it says Amazon paid no federal taxes on $11.2 billion in profits last year. How did they do that? Well, they don't play in the 1040 world. They are in the 1041 world. You can see the Bezos Family Foundation, which Jeff Bezos controls most of the stock, most of the Amazon stock, and donates it to his foundation. You can see there's $24.7 million in valuation right now as of 2017. I'm sure it's grown. And this is just 1 year, 30,000 shares of Amazon.com stock, or $30 million. Okay. Even when they got divorced, Mackenzie Bezos pledged to give away half of her $36 billion fortune to charity. What kind of charity do you think that she's going to give it to? Our president, Donald Trump, when he was up against Hillary Clinton in the last election and they were debating, and Hillary Clinton shouted out to the world that Donald Trump hadn't paid taxes in 30 years. Do you remember what he said? He said, "That just makes me smart." In fact, here's a screenshot of that speech that she gave that night. The crazy thing is that the Clintons do the same thing. This is the Clinton Family Foundation return, the 990PF return of private foundation for the Clinton Family Foundation. You can see it's a Section 501c3 exempt private foundation, and it has $2.6 million in it. There's another foundation that they also have with the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation. Okay. And it's a 501c3 nonprofit as well. Look how much wealth is in that foundation. Look at the bottom right here. This is just in the current tax year, which was 2017. $323 million of wealth, all tax-free. You know the names, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the Kennedys, the Hiltons, Trumps, Clintons, Bushes, Romneys. The list goes on and on. These are America's richest families, families that live too large for mere mansions, and so they buy compounds in Cape Cod or Florida or Maine. This is the Andrew Mellon Foundation, the Carnegie Mellon fame, the Mellon Bank of New York, MBNY. And check this out. This is the return of private foundation. There's $6.8 billion worth of wealth in that foundation. These families are treated like royalty. Their wealth has created dynasties that last for years, decades, even generations. They've had institutions named after them like Vanderbilt University, Rockefeller Center, or the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. So why is it that you never hear about these families going belly up or losing any money during these crashes, like the crash of 29, 87, 2000, 2008? Well, the short answer is they play by a completely different set of rules. They never leave their wealth up to the whims of the market, and they constantly protect their wealth from all of the different outside forces that would erode or eat away at their wealth. Things like taxation, divorces, interest expense, inflation, lawsuits. What separates us from them is they do not take risks. Instead, they put their faith and trust in timeless financial principles like tax law, federal contract law, and constitutional law. And that allows them to take advantage of wealth building opportunities that you and I never hear about. They use little known strategies that make market crashes and gyrations irrelevant to them. They're able to keep their wealth from generation to generation instead of losing it or paying Uncle Sam. They grow their wealth and their legacy so they're able to accomplish anything that they want. While we dream of taking vacations, they actually buy islands While we donate our time to hospitals, they're actually building hospitals. While we attend universities, they build colleges and universities. So do you think that there's something that these guys know that we don't? While everybody out there is following institutions like Wall Street and the banks, why is it that we don't know what the richest families know? Well, it's because it's been kept a secret until now. I want you to think about this. In 2012, $154 billion was sucked out of the markets. That's sucked out of your 401k, your IRA, your mutual fund, and your individual stocks. $154 billion. During that same time, the world's 100 richest families, people, became $241 billion richer. Do you think that's a coincidence? So let me share with you this secret. I call this the purpose-driven blueprint. And this is not a theory. This has been used legally and ethically by myself and others for generations. In fact, we talked about it before. There are over 200,000 families in the United States that are in the 1041 system. Now, I know it sounds strange, but there are two tax systems, and this is done intentionally by the IRS. All right, there's the 1040 system and the 1041 system. And both have been around since 1913 when the IRS was first formed. Both of them have a top tax rate of 37%. But this is where they differ. Only in the 1040 system do you deal with capital gains tax. Only in the 1040 system do you deal with state tax, which is also based on your federal income. And only in the 1040 system do you deal with property tax or ad valorem tax. And only in the 1040 system do you deal with estate tax and probate costs. How is this possible? Well, there's a little known statistical anomaly called the Rule of 97. And it goes like this. In 1897, 97% of all Americans were business owners or entrepreneurs. They were the employers. They were farmers, butchers, bakers, shopkeepers. Even the guy on the street sharpening scissors was an entrepreneur and created his own income. 3% of Americans were apprentices and worked for the 97%. They worked for the rest of those business owners. Now, 100 years later, over a 100-year transition, as people left the farms and started working in the factories, as we fought multiple world wars and soldiers came home and all they wanted to do was have to buy a house, raise a family, have a white picket fence, and go to work from 9 to 5. They left their businesses. They shut down their family businesses. They shut down their farms, went to work on the factories, and they naturally just started to default into the 1040 tax code. All right. In 1997, those numbers flip-flopped and only 3% of Americans were business owners and entrepreneurs. 97% of us went to work for corporate America. And so as we left our businesses, we shifted from the 1041 system to the 1040 system by default as W-2 wage earners. And so in the two systems that have been around since 1913, remember, Judge Learned Hand said, in America, there are two tax systems, one for the informed and one for the uninformed, and both are legal. Both of them have been around since 1913. What happened was, because there was this shift, this demographic shift, and everybody left, they left their own businesses and started working for other people. What happened was less people were qualified for the 1041 system and more people just defaulted to the 1040 system. All right. And here's the challenge is that both systems have the top tax rate of 37%. But in the 1040 system, you have to work with capital gains tax. You got to deal with capital gains tax on assets. And you also have to pay state tax, which is based on federal income tax. You got to pay property tax in the 1040 system. You got to pay estate tax and probate cost in the 1040 system. So why is it? How is it that what happened that all of this information was lost over that 100-year period of time? Well, what happened was every single chance that Congress got with every different administration, every chance they got to rewrite the tax code in the 1040 world, they took full advantage of it. And now the Internal Revenue Code is over 82,000 pages. Now, I realize we don't follow all 82,000 pages, because a lot of those are obsolete. But 82,000 pages since 1913 have been written for the Internal Revenue Code. Here's the kicker. Only 22 pages make up the 1041 system. So the question I have for you is, how in the world would your CPA or your tax attorney or your estate planning attorney even know about the 1041 system? How would they even understand the rules of the game if it's only 22 pages out of 82,000? Here's what the structure looks like. If you have an LLC, which we recommend that if you have an S Corp or C Corp, you convert it into a multi-member LLC. You bifurcate the LLC, meaning you take on a partner, and you create a trust, a business trust, that becomes the partner to your LLC. That business trust takes any distributions of income from the LLC after deductions are taken for ordinary business deductions. Once the money is in the business trust pays all business-related expenditures for business assets that are owned by the trust. Any remaining money that might be taxed at the highest rate, 37%, is distributed through a K-1 to another entity, the family trust. The family trust does the exact same thing, paying all expenditures that are related to the family assets that are owned by the family trust. Any money that's left over from the family trust that would normally be taxed at 37% is donated to your private foundation, where it continues to grow and compound tax-free into perpetuity. Now, we've said it before, taxes follow title. So this whole concept is boiled down to two things: ownership versus control. Ownership versus control. Taxes follow title. So does liability. So if you have a trust and you give up ownership of the assets and ownership of the income, you're no longer liable for those assets or that income. Now, there are different types of trusts out there. There are 86 different types of trusts in America. Most of those trusts are what we call statutory. They're recorded at the state level. There's only two types of trusts out there that are recorded at the federal level and supersede all state law. And so you have to make sure that you have the correct type of trust in order to actually pull this off the way we're talking about. You also have to worry about the problem of devaluation of your currency. Inflation is a real problem today, where the government says that inflation is about 3% a year, meaning every single year that you hold dollars in savings, you're losing 3 to 4% of the value of those dollars every single year. But if you decide to make a decision to switch into the 1041 system, that opens up all kinds of opportunities for you to mitigate that loss. Can it be 100% mitigated? Yes, it can. These trusts also protect against lawsuits. Divorces are a lawsuit between two people, between the husband and wife. And if you own your assets, those assets are subject to divorces, where you would have to give up 50% of the assets that you and your spouse own together, right? But if you give up ownership to an entity, now you don't own those assets. And in divorces, they're protected against lawsuits. So the 1041 tax system, we also call it the trust and foundation system, is designed specifically for philanthropic and generational legacy. And let me show you how it's broken down. Right now, you're currently taking your income and your assets and you're focusing on ownership, not control. What the 1% do, the way that they win this game, is they give up ownership but maintain control of the game. They give up ownership, but they never ever lose control of the game. And so you got to figure out and ask yourself, how is your business framework structured? How are you structured for your business? Are you renting an entity from your state, like an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp? Is that how you're holding your wealth and your assets and your income at the state level? Remember, there are 86 different types of trusts in the U.S. They all operate differently. There are real estate investment trusts, ILITs, irrevocable life insurance trusts. There are AB trusts, grantor type trusts, simple trusts, complex trusts, 86 different types of trusts in the US. Most of those are statutory, meaning they're registered at the state level. So you got to think to yourself, do you own a trust that's only registered at the state level, or does it supersede the state's authority and is it registered at the federal level? Is it a separate entity registered with the federal government? How do you hold those assets? How do you receive and draw your income? Are your businesses and real estate and income structured for tax efficiency? Why would you structure it this way? Well, number one is you drastically reduce your personal, federal taxes, state taxes, local taxes, city taxes. All of that goes away. Total avoidance of capital gains tax, total avoidance of estate and inheritance tax, absolutely no probate costs, total protection of assets from lawsuits and personal liabilities, total protection of assets from divorces. You know, most of us grew up thinking that the way to building wealth is to own everything, it's not always true. You know, I used to believe the same thing until I had a shift a few years ago. You know, I had to realize that there were different results that I wanted to, and so I had to shift my mindset. I stopped asking myself, how am I going to own more things? And I started asking myself, how am I going to learn the skills that I need to keep my money and grow that wealth? And so that brings us to key number 2. Uninterrupted compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Albert Einstein told us that uninterrupted compounding interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Not just compound interest, uninterrupted compound interest. What does that mean? Well, most people fall into one of 3 categories. Most people in America are what we call debtors, where when you have a major purchase like a car, a home, college education, you borrow that money and then you use your future income to pay that money back, only to end up back at zero. And then when you have another major purchase, you borrow more money, either on a credit card, car loan, student loan, home loan, and you use future income to pay that loan back, only to get back to zero. When the next major purchase comes, you have to borrow again and use future income to pay that loan back just to get to zero. You know, our parents and grandparents were no better off though. They were what we call savers, where they would save that money over time in an account, and they would have to grow that money over time and hopefully earn some interest on that money. If they did earn interest, they had to pay tax on that interest. And then when they needed the money to buy the car or the home or pay for college, they drained that tank and emptied it and started their compounding all over again. They reset the compounding. They saved their money again, and when they wanted to buy the next home or the next major purchase, they drained the tank and reset that compounding again. All right? Wealthy families understand that if you don't interrupt the compounding, that at a certain point in time, this curve, this wealth curve, goes hyperbolic. It goes straight up. And if you are consistent and you are committed to this process and you don't interrupt the compound growth of your money over time, you can easily pass down millions and millions and millions of dollars from generation to generation to generation. Let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. This is an actual chart of the S&P 500 from the best 30 years of the S&P 500 during the time frame from 1970 to 1999 or 2000. The best 30 years of the S&P 500, where the average return for the S&P over that time was almost 15% on average, okay? Now, let's say you have $1 million nest egg, and let's say that you're retiring and you need to live on about $100,000 a year, or 10% a year that you need to spend down. Well, if you have constant returns, if you have uninterrupted compound growth of that money, then you can safely withdraw $100,000 a year and never run out of money. But if the market is volatile, if the market is going up and down and you're seeing positive returns and negative returns during that same time frame, an interesting thing happens. When you interrupt the compound interest, everything changes. And if you have to spend down that same $1 million nest egg at $100,000 a year, you see that you run out of money in a very quick 14-year time frame. All of that has to do with volatility and interrupting the compounding. Here's another way to look at it. Let's say that you have $150,000 coming in your home, and you're able to save that money and grow that wealth and never interrupt the compounding. Well, over a period of 20 years, 2 decades, that $150,000 a year growing at 6%, which is exactly what these accounts that we use grow at. When $150,000 grows at 6% for 20 years and is never interrupted, that wealth grows to $5.9, almost $6 million at the end of 20 years. $6 million. But the red chart shows what happens if we interrupt the compounding and stop that and drain that tank and have to start compounding all over again and growing that money all over again, only to drain the tank again over the same 20-year period of time. If you drain the tank just 5 times during that 20 years and it took you 4 years to refill it and gain that interest back, if you did that for 20 years, 2 decades, and only did that 5 times, that's the equivalent of making a $5.8 million mistake. But we do that every single year. We have that money coming into our personal economy, and then the money comes in and we spend the money, and then the money comes in again and we spend the money. The money comes in again and we spend the money. We drain the tank. That's what the red chart is showing you below, versus the uninterrupted compounded growth of that same money. And if you interrupt the compounding and spend the money rather than saving the money and let it continue on, that's a $5.8 million mistake. Now, wealthy families understand this game. They understand that if they're able to lock down that wealth and keep that money and grow that money and let it compound and grow forever, that is how you create generational legacy and build wealth from generation to generation. And again, if you were to do that, and year number 1, you saved $150,000 and started doing that every year for the next 20 years, the total amount growing at 6% could be as much as $8 million. That's generational wealth right there. That's legacy wealth. But we don't do that. We don't lock that money down and capture it and control it. What we do is, the first thing we do is we pay taxes. And so we lose, anywhere from 30 to 62% in some cases, 30% on the low end of every dollar coming in, we lose it through taxation. And so over that same 20-year cycle, we're talking about $2.2 million lost and gone forever. And what's worse is it's not just those dollars that you're transferring and losing, it's what those dollars could do for you and your family over time. You miss out on all of the compound interest that those dollars, that money could have earned you had you just had a way to lock it down and keep that money. $2.2 million over the next 2 decades, gone and lost forever. But it doesn't stop there. We also borrow money and have to service that debt. We have credit card loans, car loans, student loans, home loans, lines of credit, all kinds of stuff. And the national average right now is 45% of every dollar that we earn goes towards servicing some kind of debt in America. And so if you look at that number, 45% of every dollar coming in on $150,000 a year coming in, if you look at that combined with taxes, you're looking at a $5.5 million loss. Gone. $5.5 million is what it's costing you to operate the same way that you're operating today. If you continue down the same path that you're on today, it will cost you $5.5 million in the next 20 years, just in taxes and debt service alone. Not to mention what those dollars could do for you if you were able to put them to work. The last place that we leak and lose wealth and lose our money and don't lock it down is just in our overhead and lifestyle expenses. And that goes for anything from food or fuel or clothing or entertainment or insurance expenses or whatever it is. If you don't have a mechanism for capturing and controlling that money first, you're going to lose that money too. And again, it's not just the $7.4 million between taxes, debt service, and lifestyle. $7.4 million lost. It's what those dollars can do for you over time. Over time. What if you lived to the age of 80 How much money would that be? And so the way to solve this is by locking down the money coming in and not losing that money to taxes or to interest expense or to lawsuits or inflation or any of that stuff that's eroding your wealth. It's to lock it down. And when you do that, you can collapse time. And so we teach clients like Roger. Roger was 57 years old when he came to me. He built up his business from absolutely nothing to a valuation of over $30 million. And he wanted to retire. He wanted to sell the business. He even had a buyer for the business, but he was scared to death of the capital gains exposure. And he had interviewed a ton of tax experts, and none of them had a good enough solution for him. He wasn't real happy. He was thinking that he was going to have to work in that business until he dropped dead, and he didn't know how to transfer that wealth to his family tax-free. So what we did was we created two different trusts. We created a business trust and a family trust. We moved his business that he owned into the business trust, and all of the assets and all of the value of the business was owned by the business trust. And the end result was he was able to liquidate that, stop the bleeding, and keep all of that money and grow that money. We were able to do all of that while protecting his wealth and his business against inflation, interest expense, lawsuits, losses in that trust structure. Another client of mine is a good friend. His name's Mark from Florida. He bought a $1.3 million piece of property in Florida. He does real estate for a living, investing in real estate for a living. And he bought a $1.3 million piece of property, and he's selling it for $6.5 million. And he had a $5.2 million capital gains tax exposure. What we were able to do was we eliminated the capital gains tax on the property, and we totally changed his business practice. He no longer had to flip properties and use a 1031 exchange to flip properties, where you put the equity from one property into the new property that you're buying to avoid taxes. All of that went away when we set him up with the trust and foundation strategy. Think about this. No more 1031 exchange necessary. No more property taxes. No more capital gains tax on those assets. No more rental income tax on any of the rental income from his properties. Nicole and Jason's another great example. Business owners. They have an air conditioning company. Started it 5 years ago. Year number one, they did about $80,000. Year number two, they did about $150,000. Today, they're doing over $1.4 million in top line revenue. And they have a $400,000 tax problem. $400,000 tax problem today. What we were able to do was help them to keep that money, not just this year, not just for 2019, but the next year, the year after that, the year after that, the year after that. They're keeping that money, and they're able to fund their own private foundation. And they love foster kids just like my wife and I do. So they're able to take that foundation money and grow that wealth and help more foster kiddos along the way. And their business is also growing because they're able to keep that capital and put it to work back into the business. We've also helped farm families like Preston. He's the son of a farm family. They've got hundreds of millions of dollars of land, and his family owned the land for generations, but they're scared to transfer that wealth to their kids because of probate costs and estate tax. And so right now, the only solution so far has been to sell the property to their kids and finance that through bank debt. And so all that does is creates generational debt loads that their kids and grandkids now have to deal with. So the result is they can now transfer that property completely outside of probate with no probate costs or estate tax, completely tax-free. No more burdening the future generations with that bank debt. Remember, inside of these trusts, the trustee enjoys total control over incomes and assets, protects domestic and international incomes and assets. If you have a business that's receiving foreign income, this will protect your foreign income from taxes as well. This also protects your wealth in your family, and it stays in your family from generation to generation inside of your bloodline through these bloodline clauses. These entities or institutions remain viable, and they protect your income and assets for generation to generation. They remain totally protected from all creditors, lawsuits, judgments, including government agencies like the IRS. This allows the creation of philanthropic legacies and endowments which can grow from generation to generation. So ask yourself, how do you protect and keep your wealth? Do you buy into the notion of a traditional trust? You remember, there's 86 different types of trusts in America. What type of trust do you have? Is it a grantor type trust, where it's only registered at the state level and subject to state laws and state restrictions? Or is it one of the complex trusts that we're talking about in the 1041 system? Do you leave your assets and incomes up to the mercy of the banks and rigged markets? Or do you leave your hard-earned income and money in the bank earning less than 1%? So they can turn around and lend it out and earn 400 to 1,300%? Or do you have your own bank? Do you have your own banking mechanism? Do you borrow from the banks to grow your businesses and grow your assets? Or do you have your own financing mechanism set up? Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking that's great. That's how Warren Buffett and Bill and Melinda Gates do it, but that's not me. And I'm here to tell you, if that's what you're thinking, you're wrong. You see, we're all equal under the law, but the principle that you have to understand first before you're able to shift is that you never lose control of your money. The wealthy understand this. They understand that you never, ever, ever lose control of your money. The ultra rich understand that they're able to spend their money without ever interrupting the compounding and earning dividends or income or cash. Key number 3, the final secret to this whole system is that the secret to success is to own nothing, but to control everything. This statement was said by Nelson Rockefeller. Nelson Rockefeller is now the patriarch of the Rockefeller family. They have about 130 family members that are living today, and every year they visit their compound and have a family retreat. And everything's paid for by the Rockefeller Family Foundation, of course. Nelson Rockefeller said this in 2014. He said, "The secret to success is to own nothing, but to control everything." The name of the game is ownership versus control. You see, estate planning is a method of focusing on ownership of assets and distributing those assets to beneficiaries using two-party contracts that they call trusts. Those are not true trusts. They focus on complex structures like C Corps, S Corps, and grantor type trusts, and they try to hide the money from Uncle Sam using multi-level LLCs and multi-layer LLCs and all this other stuff. They play all of these shenanigans and provide expensive estate planning setups, and they're still subject to scrutiny by the IRS and other government organizations, and they're still in the 1040 system. It's also flawed because in this new economy, you cannot predict the future. You cannot predict the future. Market uncertainty and volatility makes it impossible to do that. And what we find is that with every new administration, they seem to change the rules of the game in the 1040 world every single chance they get. So how do you grow your assets? Well, rule number 1 is never lose control of your capital. The golden rule is never lose control of your money. Never lose control of that wealth. You've got to recapture your entire tax savings at all levels so that you can fund your legacy. And then pay yourself interest first instead of paying it to a bank. Do you have a banking mechanism set up? Are you able to finance your business and your asset purchases and your lifestyle and lend to others with the same kind of profitability as banks? Are you able to guarantee the security of your capital? You see, it's no wonder why only 2% of retirees in America are actually self-sustaining. Most people are dependent on their relatives, or they're still working, or they're dependent on charity. And so most of us give up hope. We say things like, let us eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Well, the good news is that we can teach you what the elite 1% do. So instead of living like you were back in college, you can live out your golden years with an even better quality of life than you did when you were working. Think about the American dream, where you put in 20 or 30 years and then you retire with a gold watch and a pension. And then you get to travel and enjoy your family in your golden years. You get to do all the things that you couldn't do while you were working, and you get to make up for all of those sacrifices. Well, that dream died decades ago for a lot of people. But for the 1%, they live this every single day. And the dream doesn't have to be just a dream that the ultra rich get to live. So let me ask you a question. Over the last hour or so, do you feel like you've learned a ton? Are you feeling a little overwhelmed because we've covered so much? So in the past hour, would you say that it's been time well spent so far? Would you agree that, we probably can't cover everything in an hour or probably even all day to really show you how this is done? So I got a question. Is it okay if I spend about 10 minutes going over that special offer I was talking about? I developed this so that I could help you to actually not just find your purpose, but actually fund it and pull it off. So I call this the purpose-driven blueprint. And purpose-driven blueprint is just a system that I created out of necessity. So here's what you're going to get. The first thing you're going to get is what I call the blueprint, the purpose-driven blueprint. That's a $497 value. That's for free. You're also going to get a thorough analysis, a one-on-one review of the current state of your personal economy. That's a $2,497 consultation fee waived. You get that for free. You also get 12 months of exclusive mentorship access to a private network of legal and professional advisors, including myself and my team. That's normally a $5,000 retainer. You get that completely free. You also get 12-month access to our library of videos and training sessions within that private network. That's a $997 a year value. You get that for free. And if you decide to move forward and set up your own trust and foundation, you get 20% off the setup price. Normally $60,000, you get $12,000 off of that price. That's a $20,491 value, totally free. Now, I understand that information alone is not going to get you where you want to go. So who has this worked for? Well, it's worked for business owners who have built their business from nothing and want to exit their business tax-free. It's also worked for real estate investors who are exposed to capital gains tax on their investment properties. They get to keep all of that. It's also worked with investors who have built their portfolio up and they want to pass that wealth on to their children without the government grabbing half of it. And it's worked for my wife and I to be able to fund our own private foundation, Kind Foundation, to help kids heal from life's hurts. Now I get it, old habits die hard, and I had two choices. I kind of felt like the choice I had was either buy a left-handed screwdriver for $3.99 or a right-handed screwdriver for $1.99. My first option is I could price this really, really low and sell it to as many people as possible, but I wouldn't be able to give you as much value as I wanted to. The second option requires a little bit more of an investment on your part, but in exchange, you get a ton more resources and you get all of the tools that you need to actually pull this off and succeed. So what do the wealthy say about the 1041 system? Well, the Rothschild brothers of London said this. They said, the few who understand this system will be so interested in its profits and the rest so dependent on its favors that there will be no opposition from either class. This was said in a tax court ruling back in 1934. Anyone may so arrange their affairs that his taxes shall be as low as possible. He is not bound to choose that pattern which will best pay the treasury. There is not even a patriotic duty to increase one's taxes. That was in a case called Gregory versus Halvering, circa 1934. This was a case called Commissioner versus Newman back in 1947, and this was the dissenting opinion. It said over and over again, courts have said that there is nothing sinister in so arranging one's affairs as to keep taxes as low as possible. Everybody does so, rich and poor, and all do right. For nobody owes any public duty to pay more than the law demands. Taxes are enforced extractions, not voluntary contributions. To demand more in the name of morals is mere cant. And of course, Preston said this. He said, Sean will walk you through the steps to take your money back from the greedy banks and back into your own control, your own personal banking system. Not only that, but you'll make a friend for life because Sean genuinely cares about your success. I've never met a more selfless, genuine, and helpful person in my life, and you won't either. Vishal, who's an airline pilot from Florida, said, because of working with Sean, I'm now have improved confidence that I can weather the financial storms that may arise in the next 10 to 20 years by being smart about my money and investing now using Sean's connections and alternative investment strategies. And Jared, who's the CEO of a manufacturing company, said, Sean introduced me to a strategy that will enable me to build a legacy for my family for generations. If you're looking to build and protect your future for your family, a conversation with Sean is a must. So again, what are you going to get? You get the Purpose-Driven Blueprint, a $497 value for free, a thorough one-on-one analysis of your personal economy, a $2,497 value free. You get 12 months of mentorship access to professional advisors, including myself and my team. It's a $5,000 value free. You get 12 months access to a library of videos and trainings. That's a $997 value for free. You get 20% off the setup price. That's $12,000 of value. The total value you get today is $20,491. So the question I have for you is if all this did for you and your family was help you increase your bottom line by 40% or more by making one simple change, would that be worth it to you? If all this did was help you to grow your wealth more so that you could give it away more effectively, so that you could help more people, would it be worth it to you? If all this did was help you save, 60, 70, 80, 90, 95% or more in your taxes, would it be worth it to you? So what is that worth to you? How much did you pay in taxes last year? How much did you pay the year before that? What does the total tax bill look like over the last 10 years? How much would you pay to learn all of these strategies, to actually pull this stuff off? You can see why other people are paying me right now $12,500 for one-on-one coaching. And if I told you you were able to save 90, 95% or more in your taxes, imagine what you could do with the money. What kind of quality of life would you have? What kind of charitable giving would you do? What kind of investments would you make? So you can see why this would be a great deal at $5,000 or $2,997, which is what I charge the general public. But here's the deal. Because you waded through this program, you watched this training, I'm prepared to do something for you. I'm prepared to get you started right now for just $19.97 today. So do me a favor, go to the purposedrivenblueprint.org, purposedrivenblueprint.org. You're going to click on the Get Started Now button, Get Started button, fill out your information, and you're going to put your credit card information in. And here's what's going to happen. You have two choices. You can choose out, you can continue on your path and nothing will change. You can choose the $3.99 left-handed screwdriver if you want to. And you can continue to wear the blinders and continue to believe that your tax guy has it all figured out and that he's got you paying the least amount of taxes possible. Or the second option is you can take a step forward. You can put your credit card out right now and reserve that seat for the Purpose-Driven Blueprint for that first meeting. Your card will be charged $19.97. All right, we'll hold that on file. And at the end of the one-on-one session, if you don't feel completely transformed and armed with all the knowledge that you need to be able to push your business forward, then you can just email us at the private email address. We'll give you that email address at the end of the meeting. If you love it, do nothing, and we'll just charge your card. But if you don't love it, I'll give you an email that you can send an email to, and we will not charge your card. All right. But if you're like most people, you'll get more value from that one-on-one meeting than the $19.97 price. All right. You're going to love the experience. So if so, then do nothing. We'll bill you $1,997 after it's over. All right. Does that sound more than fair? Okay, start now. You can reserve your seat now and get started now. Go to purposedrivenblueprint.org/order-page. That's purposedrivenblueprint.org/order-page. Go ahead and get started. Apply today. If you don't like it for any reason or you don't qualify, you won't even get charged. We're not even going to charge your card. So go to purposedrivenblueprint.org/order-page. Again, here's what you're going to get. You're going to get the purpose-driven blueprint, a $497 value for free, a one-on-one analysis of your personal economy, a $2,497 value free. You get 12 months of mentorship access to a private network of professional advisors, $4,997 value free. You're going to get 12 months access to our library of videos and trainings. That's a $997 value for free. And you're going to get 20% off the setup price, a $12,000 value. Total value is $20,491. $20,491, all for $1997. Now, let me tell you about two different people that I know. One of them is like this guy on the left. One of them is a good friend of mine. He's actually a broker out of Chicago. He's a Wall Street guy, has a really impressive shop. They do a ton of business. I think they did about $700 million in top line revenue last year. And every year, this buddy of mine calls me and he bitches about having to pay over $1 million in taxes. Over $1 million in taxes every single year. And I'm just sick to my stomach because I'm thinking he could be donating that money to Kind Foundation and helping kids, right? But he pays it. He writes a check every single year. And every single year he calls me back and he bitches about it. But he doesn't take any action. He doesn't make any changes. He's not doing anything different. And so he's going to continue to get the same result year after year after year. The other type of client is like the client on the right, and that's somebody who takes action. That's somebody who makes a commitment to change. If you make a commitment to change one thing in your life, it can affect everything positively. It can imagine what you could do if you were able to keep your tax dollars from generation to generation to generation. That's how these wealthy families pull it off, you know. And I got to be honest with you, I'm no better than anybody else. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I grew up very middle class, but I was surrounded by very, very wealthy families. And so I got a taste of this stuff and started learning and studying as much of this stuff as I possibly could. And so now you can do the same thing. Take the information that I've learned, take this information and apply it to your life and shift everything. Change your entire bloodline forever. Go to purpose-drivenblueprint.org/order-page and click the Apply Now button. Fill out the application. We'll have a one-on-one meeting to see if it's a fit. You can click the Get Started Now button and put in your credit card information. You won't be charged until we know it's a fit. If it's a fit, do absolutely nothing. Do absolutely nothing and we'll get started. If it's not a fit, then we won't charge your account. So again, here's what you get. The Purpose-Driven Blueprint, a $497 value for free, a one-on-one analysis of your personal economy, a $2,497 consultation fee waived. You get 12 months of exclusive mentorship access to my own private network of legal and professional advisors, including myself and my team. That's a $4,997 retainer free. You get 12 months access to video library of training sessions, $997 value for free. And you get 20% off the setup price, a $12,000 value for free. The total value you're going to get right now is $20,491. $20,491, all for the low starting price of $1,997 today. So get started now. Apply at the purpose-drivenblueprint.org/order-page. I'll get a notification. We'll get online, have a one-on-one meeting. If it's a fit, you do nothing. You don't do anything. If it's not a fit, you simply send an email in and we won't charge your card. All right? That's it for me. I look forward to meeting you on the inside. Have a great day.